Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome back to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we are talking as a community about how the coronavirus is impacting the ways that we all work. I'm Caroline Fairchild, editor-at-large at LinkedIn News, coming to you from my home office here in New York City. We're about 50 episodes deep into Business Unusual, if you can believe it, and we've spent a lot of time speaking with leaders about how they are navigating this crisis in real time, whether it's dealing with a massive round of layoffs or having to deal with distributed teams for the first time. We've talked with dozens of CEOs who are telling us how they are not only trying to survive this crisis, but also come out on top. We've also talked to workers on the ground across industries for how they're navigating the crisis and their careers. On today's show, I wanted to zoom out a little bit further to gain a better understanding for how this crisis is going to impact the future of work long term. And there are a few execs who have thought about this more than Aaron Levie. He is the CEO of Box. He'll be joining us on today's show. He's been tweeting about this, thinking about this, and he also has some data to show us how the future of work will be shaped by this pandemic. And we look forward to hearing from him in just a bit. But before we bring him on the show, I want to hear from you. The whole point of the show is to have a conversation as a community about how the coronavirus is impacting work, how it is impacting you. How is this going for you? How is self-quarantining? How is remote work? If you're an essential worker, let us know your story in the comments. We'd love to have a conversation about that on today's show. And if you have any questions for Aaron about what this really means for artificial intelligence, what this means for distributed teams, how this is going to impact the digital community moving forward, let us know in the comments and we'll get to your questions as well as your comments on today's show. And with that, I want to bring on Aaron.
Hey, Caroline, how you doing?
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start with you. How is self-quarantining going? How is running Box going from your home? I read that you were having a little bit of trouble with your printer earlier, which is something that I know a lot of people on the stream can probably relate with. Just tell us a little bit about how it's going on the ground for you.
Yeah, so I've run into every possible technical issue at home thus far. So I've had printer issues, internet issues, run out of cords. So we're dealing with it all over here. I've never plugged in more things into more devices than working from home. You know, we're first and foremost, obviously this is a massive tragedy for you know, from a health crisis standpoint, from an economic standpoint. So it goes without saying how you know, unbelievably just difficult this event has been for so many businesses, and we take stock of the fact that we're very fortunate as an organization. We're effectively 100% cloud-based company. So we run the business, you know, using obviously mostly software. We work on Zoom, we work on Slack, we work on Box, we work on Office 365 and Google Suite, and so that makes it easier to run in a remote and distributed fashion. And we know that not all organizations have that luxury. So first of all, we're just very fortunate as a company to be in the position we are, and we don't take that lightly. The second thing is that we, as an organization, we're purpose-built for enabling secure remote work. When we started the company 15 years ago, the original idea and why we invented the business and the idea was we wanted to make it easy for people to be able to access and share their files from any location. And back then, when we started in college, that meant from a dorm room or a library. It was all these different locations, a work computer, and now obviously it means, you know, from home or from work or from anywhere. But 15 years ago, this was sort of the core premise of the company. So we were able to adjust very quickly, and we've now been really, I think, on the front lines with our customers, which are about 100,000 companies globally who need to be able to modernize the way that they're working and be able to collaborate securely, be able to work on any device in a very secure way. So our primary focus is how do we keep employees safe and healthy, and how do we make sure we enable our customers to get the most amount of value from our technology right now.
And you mentioned there are a few companies and teams like Box that were probably in a better position to weather this global pandemic in terms of how you worked previously and how you're able to work now. But take me back to March. Was there a moment when you realized that this was really going to have maybe an acceleration impact in terms of how we think about remote work, how we think about distributed teams, and all the implementations that you've already have at Box that now companies are having to implement for the first time?
Yeah, so it was really the start of the second week of March where you could start to see that the early, you know, signs in the U.S. were that we were going to experience a wave of the virus, you know, much like China. In fact, even, you know, in some cases, you know, the fear was that it would be worse because we might not have the same level of coordinated effort as China had. And so right at that stage, we decided that we had to pivot very, very aggressively as an organization. First, obviously moving to a work from home environment, but second, making sure that we set up the right type of support and sort of consultation for our customers so they could get the most out of our product. And then about a week in to the event in the middle of March, to the tail end, we decided to actually change our entire strategy for the full year. So that meant what do we need to do from a product standpoint to ensure that our customers could work remotely in a very secure and collaborative way. So we started building features that would help our customers during this time and in this climate. So we quickly pivoted the product roadmap. We pivoted our business strategy for the rest of the year. We knew that there'd be some customers that would be under economic stress, and so we had to make sure that we had a pricing model that would support their use cases. We knew that we had to enable it so customers could ramp up very quickly if maybe they didn't have licenses to be able to use Box across their business. So we decided to really execute a series of programs to make sure that we could support our customers during this time and make sure our product strategy was well aligned to how we felt like work was going to be changing, where people would be much more collaborative, much more agile, working in real time, working across applications like Zoom and Slack and Microsoft Teams and WebEx. So you could enable people to be able to work across all the different apps in their business. So that was the initial, sort of wave that where we executed on the business strategy transformation. Now we're about 2 months in, and we've just been really kind of continuing that strategy to this point.
Yeah, the second wave, if you will, of who knows how many waves are going to be in this. But if you are just joining the stream, this is Business Unusual, a live show where we're having a conversation about how the coronavirus is impacting the ways that we work. I'm here with Box CEO Aaron Levie. He's giving us some insight into what we can expect from work long term. I want to say hi to Gretchen from North Carolina, Alfred from California, Janine from Chicago, and Sophia from Boston. Thanks for joining us in the stream. A quick question in the stream from Andy. Aaron, he wants to know what % of your workforce was working from home pre-COVID?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's 100% now.
Yeah, so it was about 15% pre-COVID. We do have a population of Box employees that have to be very close to customers, so they work from home, spread all throughout the world. So it was 15% before. Now it's obviously 100%. And the big question that we're asking ourselves is, what does the new normal look like? I bet we won't go back to only 15% working from home. But I don't know that we remain fully distributed in the way that we are right now once it's safe and healthy to go back to the office. So, we imagine more of a hybrid future where you have offices that are places where people can come together, they can be creative, they can work well together. Maybe there's better technology setup or a better internet setup for some folks. And then you also add on top of that a level of flexibility where people can work from home, where they can be remote if they need. And we sort of stitch that all together using virtual or digital technologies to make it all kind of come together where people could be in the office or they could be at home. And that's sort of the hybrid future that we're imagining, but we're still trying to figure out all the specific details of what that looks like.
And some of the details you're figuring out through your data. I want to pull up some data from Box in terms of now that we are all working from home, we're seeing a lot more people working off hours, after hours. This really gets into this idea of flexible work, not 9 to 5, but doing work for when it suits you. Aaron, I've been speaking to leaders across industries for a long time who've been advocates of flexible work, but is it a good thing that more people are working off hours? I mean, how do I interpret this data? Are people working when they want to work, or are we just working all the time now that we're at home?
Well, you have this confounding variable right now, which is, many people have said this way more eloquently than I'll pull it off, but we're not really doing work from home right now. We're doing work from home during a pandemic, and that has other consequences. So with schools being shut down, with people that have families that need to be cared for, this is an environment where a high degree of flexibility is necessary and warranted. So some of our data is that we came out with, which showed that people were working more in the morning, working more at night, flattening a little bit during the day. So you had you had more flexibility during the day. It's really hard to assess, is that what work from home looks like, or is that what working from home during a pandemic looks like? And so we're not making any grand statements that the future is that we have to have longer days. But certainly right now, while people are juggling all these different factors in their lives, they are finding ways to be more flexible. And we think that's a healthy thing. So we think organizations are adapting to this environment where they're saying, okay, if you have to take care of your kids for a few hours during the day, that would be very unusual if we're at the workplace. It would be very hard to kind of just pop in and out, for 2 or 3 hours. But given that we're all working remotely, given that we can work virtually, it becomes a lot more plausible that I can take 2 hours off, take care of my kid, come back to work. Maybe so for me personally, I own bath duties for my 1-year-old. So I have to take off for that time slot and for the sort of hour surrounding, and then I might hop back on at 8:30 p.m. And do a few emails or some meetings that had to get pushed later in the evening. So I think we're finding ways of being flexible, during this time, and we'll have to see what carries forward really in the future of work versus what are we doing right now to triage the crisis environment that we're in.
And you mentioned making bold statements. You may not be making any bold statements just yet, but there are some companies who are. Shopify announced this morning that it's going to follow suit with Twitter and permanently work from home. You've been tweeting about what remote work could mean for the future of a lot of industries. So I want to pull up a tweet that you had recently that caught my eye. You said, "There's plenty to figure out about the future of work. It's a safe bet that things won't be exactly like before, but equally offices won't fully disappear." Some of your peers over there in Silicon Valley are saying that they are going to disappear. So is this hybrid model, do you think that's going to win out? Or are we going to see more companies like Shopify, like Twitter, go permanently to home?
Well, I do want to clarify, just in the interest of making sure that I don't change anybody's PR strategy. So I think in the case of Twitter and Shopify, they are going to keep their offices open, but they're going to allow for work from home indefinitely for employees that want to. So I think that actually does represent that hybrid state, which is not necessarily 100% remote, not necessarily going back to how things were before, but finding this middle ground where you probably will have hubs. If you have a hub in Silicon Valley or a hub in Chicago or a hub in New York, you might have 70% of your employees in those regions want to come into the office regularly to catch up with people, to be able to work, again, maybe in a better work environment, whatever the case may be. But what this allows for is for those people that want to move to a city where you don't have a hub, where you don't have critical mass because maybe it's more affordable or they want to be with their family. What this allows for is that type of flexibility. I mean, I think it's one of the things that's been extremely ironic about the tech industry is we're the makers of digital platforms that allow the whole world to be able to access information from anywhere, communicate with anyone anywhere, transact on e-commerce anywhere. And yet most of our businesses are very co-located physically in a few sort of geographic regions and heavily concentrated areas. So we think that really stands to ask the question: well, why can't we run these businesses in a much more distributed fashion in the exact same way that our consumers of our technology are using these services? And I think we're now going to enter an era where that becomes a lot more of a profound shift that begins to occur. But that doesn't necessarily mean that offices go away. I think they serve a great purpose for, again, certain parts of the atmosphere of an organization. But I think we're going to be way less office-centric as we have been over the past couple decades.
And we've seen some comments in the stream from some members who do agree that offices do serve a purpose. Al says the office will not be a place where people work, but rather a place where people collaborate. Richard says software and tech companies have really accelerated their remote work capabilities. Unfortunately, there are plenty of other businesses that have to evolve quite a bit more to succeed. On that point, on Richard's point of having to evolve a little bit more to succeed, you've been tweeting about the advantages of remote work as well. So I'm going to pull up another one of your tweets right now. I estimate that the world has gotten a lot of hours per day on time, not having to try and find the available conference room while scheduling a meeting. Aaron, you've tweeted a lot of things that have resonated with me, but this really cuts to the core.
Okay, I'm glad I stood out.
That's brutal. But I mean, what are the disadvantages, I think, of, if you're thinking about what are the things that we miss, the collaboration that Richard talked about in the stream, how do we make that work in this remote environment?
Yeah, so, I think what initially happens, and this is coming from just my own personal experience in this situation, I think often we start by trying to replicate the things that we did in the office, but then in this virtual setting. And the reality is that you have to kind of give up on trying to replicate the physical world in the virtual setting and instead try and figure out what does the virtual world allow for that you couldn't have done in the physical setting. So once you sort of free yourself from having to even try and do things the way you used to do them, all of a sudden you have these new opportunities. So one great example is I used to think a lot of the creativity in our business happened because I would walk around the office, I would talk to different people across the business, would run into people physically and bump into them and start, chatting about a new feature area. And that's how I thought a lot of the kind of creativity and inspiration was coming, was from those types of interactions. And that was completely true. However, what that missed was the kind of collaboration you can have across time zones and across regions. So I was only interacting with people that I could physically interact with within the office experience. So now that we've gone virtual, it is just as likely that I'm on a video call with a colleague in 2 or 3 or 10 time zones away as I am with somebody that is, would normally be coming to our headquarters that I'd be working with. And so all of a sudden, when you can break space and time, now I can begin to work with way more people. I can get more talent exposed into the business. We can actually move way faster because we end up coming together really just for the kind of critical moments of that decision or that strategy. So while you might miss some of the serendipity that happens in the physical environment, you actually get probably way more ideas surfaced, way more transparency across the business. Another great example is we do an all hands every single week. We always have, but at this all hands, everybody's on the same video call. Everyone has just a little square that they can participate in that video call. And so we're all a part of this broader community as a business, as opposed to, normally what you'd be doing at an all hands is you get on stage, you have a microphone, you're reading some kind of practice lines. And it's just way less natural. It's a way less normal way to be communicating and collaborating as an organization. So to be able to get 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 people, on a video call where we're all talking and there's a Slack channel going and we're talking in real time about the business, people are asking questions, we're able to answer them quickly. That starts to create a new level of transparency, a new level of collaborativeness in an organization that we think will have way better effects in how the business is run going forward. So those are some of the benefits that we're already seeing.
And I think a lot of people on the stream would probably be surprised to know that Box is also seeing data that collaboration is going up amid this pandemic. Let's pull up that graph right now. I think people think pandemic and they think that we're all siloed in our homes talking to these screens all day and probably working better together. Silicon Valley CEOs have been a long proponent of distributed teams, but now we're seeing as executives across industries, we're having to make this shift. Collaboration, working across teams has been a trend before the pandemic. Do you think that we're going to see this accelerate even more coming out of it?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is that if you think about every kind of crutch that we used within an office environment or within maybe the more kind of physical way of working, we had, the crutches that we had to use were layers of hierarchy. We had to use waterfall approaches for decisions to get made and information to get cascaded through an organization. Well, when you go digital and you go virtual, you don't have the time or the need for those types of layers or that type of waterfall. So what ends up happening is just way more people are collaborating together in real time, and they're seeing the benefit of that. I mean, imagine being on a Slack channel or in a Teams channel where whole organization is coming together. Well, there's no sort of time or element of hierarchy when you're in a Slack channel. Like everybody has the exact same level of voice. Everybody can collaborate, together. And so what's going to end up happening is we're going to see that is a way better way to work. We're getting way better ideas from our organization and people all throughout the business that are coming up with stuff, as opposed to normally it would come down to who gets invited to that meeting. What is the level of seniority of the kind of people that get to participate? How limiting is that? How sort of uncollaborative is that a way of running a business? So I think what's going to happen is because of this event in shelter in place, we're going to start to see the benefits of working in this way. Even when it's then safe and healthy to go back to the office, I think people are going to say, how do we replicate some of the innovation and creativity and bottoms up sort of ideation and collaboration that we got when we were working from home, but in this more hybrid environment. So I think there's no turning back from the level of collaboration that we're seeing in business today. That is something we're not going to be able to unwind.
I think that's an interesting perspective, and I want to bring it back and tie it back into company culture. Culture is, Silicon Valley tech companies' favorite buzzword. And I think if you sat down a panel of tech execs 3 months ago and said, we're going to go through a global pandemic and it's going to be great for your company culture, they'd probably say no way. But if you think about this, and also productivity across the board, so tease this out a little bit for me in terms of how you think that this really is going to impact company culture positively as we come out of this.
Yeah, I think I would have been in that camp also. I mean, I've been very impressed and surprised by our ability to bring the best of our culture into this virtual format. I think it helps when you have a company that already has a codified culture, and then what you're trying to do is sort of transpose that into this new virtual way of working. So we have the benefit of, we're not inventing our culture from scratch. We have 2,000 Box employees that have sort of been able to learn our values, been able to figure out what we expect from each other, and now we're just trying to replicate that in this virtual way of working. But I think, if you imagine what would a great company culture be, probably that you'd make decisions quickly. People would be empowered to own their area of the business. People would be hopefully friendly and collaborative and optimistic and great to be around. People are not assholes to each other and jerks, and we work with high integrity. So let's say those are the kinds of things that you'd want in a culture. Well, when you move to virtual, the great thing is that many parts of that culture actually get amplified. So again, the ability to make decisions quickly, the ability to have a degree of autonomy around what you own, but a high degree of collaboration on getting to the best outcome or the best idea. Those ways of working are actually accentuated when you move to video, and when you move to Slack, and when you move to Box and sharing files. And so the great thing is that we've not seen any drop in our core values in this environment, and we've actually seen an accelerant to some of our values around being able to move quickly, being able to be decisive. And then actually one other one which is exciting is I found that you can be even more customer centric in this environment. And it's very counterintuitive because there are so many of us where we spend so much of our time, and I'm sure that some folks watching or listening are in this camp. I am in it as well. We spend our time on the road. We're in airplanes. We're working with customers directly, hand in hand. And we sort of built up this belief that is what being customer centric was. The ironic thing is that if you're on airplanes and you're meeting with customers one-on-one, you're being customer centric with those customers that you're with. But think about all the other clients that you now don't have the time to be able to interact with or spend time with. So what we found is that we can actually engage with vastly more customers by moving to virtual, because on a single day, I could be chatting with 3 or 4 different clients and making sure that they're getting everything that they need from us. Whereas previously, I might be able to do 1 or 2 in a day or in a couple day period if you have to fly to a different region. So one of our core values is blowing our customers' minds. And we've been able to actually increase the amount of customer centricity and interaction that we've had during this time in this environment. So I think there's ways where companies can really actually take their culture to an all new level, even amidst what is a very difficult and stressful time for employees that I know that so many organizations are dealing with.
We're all dealing with it, and I'm seeing dozens of questions in the stream from workers, so we're hoping that you will help them navigate it right now. So I'm going to get to a couple of those right now. Mika has a question that I think is interesting along the theme of increased productivity and working off hours. Any thoughts on a 4-day work week in the U.S. economy? Is that going to be something that potentially we could adopt, maybe even at a more rapid clip, as we're all working perhaps more remotely and on the hours that we want to?
I actually don't have any opinion about that one. Unfortunately, I haven't sort of read the studies or looked at the different countries or environments that have done that. So I have less of an opinion about that. What I do think, I have a very strong opinion that this should be hopefully a revolution in childcare support. I think we need to make sure that people have the kind of support to take care of their families and be able to do their job, make it affordable, make it available. So I think that, whether it's going to 4 days or finding new ways to be able to support families, working families that have to deal with all this new load, I think that's going to be incredibly important.
Victoria has a question as well that hopefully you'll be able to address. She says, you can't just walk over to someone anymore. You have to arrange a call, a meeting time. How can we improve or change this as we still stay remote? What's been working for you in terms of that water cooler talk that I think a lot of people on the stream are probably craving right now?
Yeah, well, this might be unfair because I get very annoying and I can bug people all the time in the business. So I don't know that everyone wants to or can replicate that, but I've actually found that I can have more water cooler talk with my colleagues now than before, because everybody is really just a chat window away from being able to catch up quickly. And so again, in literally a 20-minute period, I could talk to somebody that's in Silicon Valley, somebody that's in New York, and then somebody that's in Japan. And that was not possible when you were just walking around the office, only interacting with people that were very kind of close to you. Now, again, that's an experience of a global business. We have 2,000 employees. So certainly if you're a 5 or 10 person startup, then in that case, everybody being in the same room is a very powerful, way of working. And so this is, my reflections here are really more based on, as you scale as an organization, being able to have more virtual technologies and virtual ways of working improve your ability to collaborate around the globe.
And speaking of those startups, and before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about opportunities coming out of this pandemic. You founded Box in 2005 and then had to weather through the Great Recession. And you've tweeted recently that the best time to do a startup is when you have a better solution for an important problem. What are the opportunities that you're seeing for the entrepreneurs who are maybe joining us on the stream, and how should they be thinking about this as not maybe a crisis, but their next big win?
Well, the first thing I want to caveat is this is just maybe a brief public service announcement from my perspective. I generally am against the idea that sort of the best time to start a company is during a recession. I think the best idea to start a company is when you've got a really great idea for a business, and so I think that the environment that we're in right now is actually producing some really, really great ideas. So if you think about all the new work styles that people have to be able to do in this environment, so we know that when people are working remotely and they have to work from home, this is going to change a lot of the nature of work going forward. And so there's going to be all new startup ideas, maybe in consulting services, maybe in tech software. There's going to be all new ways that people want to be able to work together. And that's going to create new software. I also think that you're going to have new capabilities for major digital platforms to emerge. I mean, think about all of the transformation that's happening in healthcare, that's happening in financial services, that's happening in life sciences. So there's going to be amazing new companies that emerge right now, just built on going and solving problems in those industries. So I think there's tremendous amounts of opportunity for new startups to emerge, but I think it's less because of the economic downturn and more because we're now seeing the power of being digital and being able to work in this new way. And so that's where I think a lot of the opportunity is going to come from.
Well, Aaron, I always appreciate your musings on Twitter, and I speak for the stream and myself when I say we appreciate it more when it's here on LinkedIn. So thank you for joining us on Business Unusual, and we'll talk with you soon.
Good to see you.
That was Aaron Levie. He's the CEO of Box, talking to us about what the future of work will look like long-term, everything from remote work, distributed teams, how he's collaborating more effectively in this remote work environment with his global team of workers. I want to thank him for coming on today's show. This is Business Unusual, a live show. We're talking with you about how the coronavirus is impacting the ways that we work. I saw dozens of questions that we didn't get to in the stream, but I'm going to have Aaron maybe go back and see if he can answer some after the show. And this is a daily show. We come to you live at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. And tomorrow, my colleague, Susie Jackson, is going to be talking to us about what the summer looks like amid COVID. We have a Memorial Day coming up. What are those seasonal businesses doing on the ground? We'll have a great show for you then. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thank you so much for joining us.